action fruit. This is the action fruit, the deeds that we could do. Hebrews chapter 13 says that on our lips, the fruit of our lips should be the sacrifice and praise. We're about to go into November. It should be about giving thanks. Philippians chapter 4 talks about giving and meeting the needs of others. This is a good thing. It's a good thing that we give to others. Romans, the entire book, talks about evangelizing those who are lost. Colossians just talks about and every good work. Colossians chapter 1, Colossians chapter 2. This is how you ought to look. There's all these deeds, every good work, all of these action fruits. And the problem is it is possible to do all of these action fruits without the heart being right. Even evangelize. It's possible to do these things without the heart being right. And the worthy walk begins in the heart. And the first thing it began with is with humility, with lowliness. And here's where, Justin, if we just give it a little bit of thought, we're not going to, we're just going to go real fast. But if you give it just a little bit of thought, okay, if there's no lowliness, no humility, no picture of where we are, of who we are in Christ, no picture of broken and how he's reached down, if there's no picture, if that's not how we're living, then it would be very easy for us to do the things we do to get. It would be very easy for us to look at ourselves and evaluate ourselves worthy because of the things we do. You see how quickly it would be for pride to swoop in there? Remember back in Galatians, we were talking about Galatians this morning, how it's just a little twist. Same actions, but just that twist without humility, just that twist of pride, and now they're all done wrong. Wrong motive, wrong purpose, wrong action. They're done to control. We can worship to control. We can parent to control. Humility is the protection against pride, and it starts with humility. It goes from lowliness to meekness to long-suffering to forbearing love, and ends with endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit. And we're going to try to get all the way to endeavoring to keep the unity of the Spirit this morning. The Christian walk, the Christian life, is about what we are. It's about how we see ourselves. That will result in what we do. John Bunyan, I often say Paul Bunyan, so if I ever do that sometime, just like wait. John, I did it upstairs a couple times, and Eric would put up a picture of the big guys. I would know I just did it. John Bunyan would say, "He who is on his face need not worry about being knocked down." And if we begin with humility, it changes how we respond in all of the rest of these. There's no fight. If the goal is unity, how do we get unity? It must begin with lowliness. And we've got to remember that this lowliness. Now, Brother Ivan, I know you look at me and you say, well, if anybody should be able to handle this lowliness and see his problems, it should be you. You would be right. But Satan tempts us with pride all the time. All different types of pride. And we took a whole Sunday just to talk about types of pride that we get tempted with. And we need to be careful and be open to the temptation of pride, because as soon as it sneaks in there a little bit, it just messes up the whole worthy walk, because it begins with humility. And so the first thing it's going to mess up is when we give in to pride, there's not going to be any meekness in the life. Humility, this lowliness, it leads to meekness. And without this control, our power, because nowhere in there do we get, Brother John, nowhere in there do we lose our power. But that control is gone. And now with that pouncing power is pouncing on everyone. It's yelling and screaming and hurting and intimidating and throwing out cutting words. And the sad thing is usually those things get thrown out, and they get thrown out to the ones who are around us. And who's around us? Well, it's our sons and our daughters and our spouses and our friends. And so we took a week and we kind of talked about this. But Bill, I don't know if I said this, but you know what the saddest thing about that picture? That's a pretty sad picture already. Sad picture, me, closest people in the world to me, those inside those four walls, and those are the ones I'm constantly swinging at and hurting. That's a pretty deplorable picture, right? But usually it's not left there, because there's consequences to my words. So Matt, if I would throw out those nasty, ugly, terrible, divisive, destructive words, here's the consequence. It hurts them. You know what? They do not want to come and hug me. The consequence is there's separation, there's division. Well, I've been around this a long time. Justin, this is usually what happens. After we throw those pouncing, divisive words, we then spin it to, nobody loves me. And we expect those ones we just abused and tore up and attacked and left battered and bloodied to come and put us back together. In fact, we're older and wiser, so we'll pull out the sword and say, you should be forgiving. Remember, I'm just a sinner. Get close, I'll whack you again. The absence of meekness is just totally destructive. And so we spent some time looking at this picture. We went to Philippians. Let each esteem others better than himself. That picture of humility, it's going to affect our actions. We went and took it a step further. The control, power under control. This power is supposed to be under control, the control of a new master. As the Holy Spirit affects our heart with the word, it should change our actions. I think we even went and, I never know when we ran out of time, but I think we even went and took a look at a picture of Christ. And you want a picture of meekness, of power under control? Remember this, Brother Bill? Stricken, smitten, beaten, wrongfully accused, spat upon. Yet, his response was, forgive them. Well, here, this is forgive them for their ignorance. They really don't know. They're blind. They can't see. They've been poisoned. Forgive them. Which really is, I want to take them to be with me. Don't defend self. And that leads us to the third one. So here's where we are this morning. This leads us to the third picture, and that is long-suffering. Now, we've talked about this before. The word used here is macrothumia, and it literally means to have a long fuse, long to blow up. It is the picture, the idea of long-tempered. It is never giving in and falling under the control of negative circumstances. Remember, Bill, I'm going to give you 3 illustrations, 3 pictures the Bible uses to help us understand what long-suffering means. None of them are any fun. Because when we talk about not falling under the control of negative circumstances, I tell you, there are some tough negative circumstances. But there are a lot of good illustrations. The first one that comes to mind is Abraham. Abraham, who had a promise. You know, he's been given a promise. We're going to multiply in your seed and sands and stars, and it'll be everywhere. And here's his circumstance. Barren, bitter wife, old man. But both in Romans and in Hebrews, it gives us this picture that he never gave in to the circumstances, the quote-unquote facts around him. And Justin, in fact, it goes on to say that he staggered not in his faith because of these things that are around him. His long-suffering didn't let circumstance change him. James chapter 5 tells us that we should learn from the examples of the prophets. Well, I'll give you a bunch of them. How about Noah? Go build an ark. Well, you know, you got the whole Cosby. What's an ark? Oh, that may be funny, but that's true. It had never rained. Brother Max, you ever been on some long building projects? You know, someone be like, I just can't wait till this gets done. I can't wait until this is over. That's how you feel, right? How about 120 years? How about every day, purpose and goal, build an ark. It's never rained. But God said, build an ark. Didn't know it didn't waver. Even though all of the circumstances and all of the struggle, you think he ever got tired? You think his mind ever said, what is no, I'm doing it in the morning. It gives us this picture of not being overcome by circumstances. Moses endured affliction versus choosing the pleasures of sin. Jeremiah, I want you to go preach, but I'm telling you now, you're going to be hated, you're going to be persecuted, you're going to be rejected. In fact, you're going to be prosecuted, and not one person will ever pay attention to you. So we call him the weeping prophet, but he did. Isaiah didn't get that bad of a speech, but he did hear this. It's just going to get worse and worse and worse, but you just keep doing it. And Brother Bill, you know what he watched it get? worse and worse and worse. And so there is this picture when we talk about long suffering, about macrothumia. It is the ability to endure, to continue through all of the negative circumstances. But there's also this other one. It is not only the attitude to endure through the circumstances, but it is an attitude that can take the attack. So you got the circumstances, and then you got the people. 1 Thessalonians tells us we're supposed to be patient toward all men. Macrothumia is interpreted endure, it's interpreted long-suffering, and it's interpreted patient. We're supposed to be patient towards all men. Like when they attack, and when they insult, and when there's jealous, and when there's envy, and when it's just total unfair treatment. The man's way is kind of like, I will not be stepped on by anyone. If you treat me unfair, I'm going to make sure you pay. I got to tell you, those are the movies I like. I like the movies when I like the old westerns when the guy gets treated unfairly and the bad guy dies. I like Rambo because the bad guy pays. I like to see the evil guy get it. If I'm not careful, malice looks good. Macrothumia is meekness applied. You see, it's under a new master, the master that said, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. It's got a new purpose. It's walking through all of these things, too. Here's a tough part. You ever been attacked as principal? Well, he knows what I said about him. It's walking through all of that without getting bitter. Let me tell you, that's tough. We can get defensive. Usually, the match usually goes like this. We can get defensive. We need to just not respond. I'm gonna tell you, there are times we should not respond. But overall, I think we don't respond. We like that because, that's just total weak. Meekness is not weakness. We need to be careful and not be defensive. Because you know what defensive is focused on? It's focused on me. I defend me. We need to not be defensive, but we do need to be ready to give an explanation. We should. When we get the opportunity to give Brandon, when you get an opportunity to give an explanation to a parent, why? What you should be doing, we're taking for granted you were right. In your behavior, in your heart, in your motives. What you're really doing is explaining, expounding, and exampling the scripture. But see, there's a difference between defending Brandon's behavior in the classroom, and explaining the love of God. It's that twist again. Always that twist. It is so tough. Doug, I get criticized often too. You want to go out to lunch and boo-hoo? Nah, it's not any good. I get criticized at work, and I get criticized at church, and you know what I've learned? I don't really get criticized at home. Lord, I'm so thankful for that. I'm thankful that you give me that place. I'm thankful for the children and the wife and the wives. Or either I do that and I'm just too deaf to hear it. But I have learned that it is good for me to get criticized. Brother Wayne, you want to know why it's so good for me to get criticized? Because I do a lot wrong. I do. And when I get criticized, it makes me look at it. And sometimes I disagree with them, but it was still good for me to look at it. Because when I look at it, you know where I have to go? That's where I have to go. I have to go to the one. I have to talk to the one, and sometimes I need reason. There's always a reason, but sometimes the pride gets in there, and the temptation is there. Brother Bill, I've learned that it is good for me to get criticized. It truly is good for me. But I have to admit, I'm still really struggling here. Because sometimes the criticism comes in and they're criticizing my motives. Brother Jeremy, he just did that because. Well, Justin, I'll be honest, I really still struggle there. Because, so you don't know my motives. You don't know my why. Justin's smart right now. He's back there going, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaketh. I can see. Well, I agree. That's smart. That's a good reply. But you know what that takes? That takes a spiritual mind. That takes a person whose engine is running. And I don't worry because, unfortunately, I don't think there's that many engines running. We need some engines running. And if the engine is running, Brother Justin, bring it on. Because if the engine's running, brethren, if a man be overtaken in a fault, you which are spirit to restore such a one in the spirit of meekness. I know why you're coming. You're coming because it's better for me. And you're thinking about what's best for me. And you're coming under control. You know what follows after 6:1? Well, bear you one another's burdens. Do good, especially under the household of faith. I mean, there's a whole lot of you taking care of me, so I'm good with that if your engine's running. But if it's not, it's just slander. And I struggle. Well, Hamilton, if I'm not careful, I will defend me some me. And the absence of meekness creates the absence of long suffering. And that's destructive. Now, there's a third picture of long suffering. So it's not being controlled by the circumstances. It's not being controlled by people. And the third one is very simple. It is being controlled by the Lord. It is getting to the place where I don't get bitter because whatever is happening, I just look to him and say, thank you, Lord, because this is what I need. We take that verse. Brother Hank, I think this is becoming one of the most misused verses. My God shall supply all your needs. You know how we look at that verse? We look at that verse as, I determined I need this, therefore God will give it to me. Well, I think that's backwards. I think we should look at what we have and now say, God has given me what I need. That changes things. Now, Brother Hamilton isn't the problem. Do you know what he said to me? Do you know how he looks to me? Do you know every time when that goes out there, the face he has? Now he's not the problem. Now he's exactly what I needed. Anyway, so there's three pictures, quick pictures of long suffering. And so we have humility, we have meekness, we have long suffering, and that leads us into this next picture. With all lowliness, meekness, long suffering, forbearing one another in love. Humility, meekness, long suffering, then forbearing love. Right? We got this right, Brother Hank. Generally, we all know the whole love thing. Here you go. Love thing. He's going to go. This is where we're going to get the picture of the 4 words for love, or it's 10 o'clock. The 3 words for love. My Greek is very limited. But I've read and heard that there's more than 4. There's a lot of words that are used for love. But we break this down, and here's usually how it goes. We have this nice general picture, and we could go, all right, well, first you have this, let's do first, there's eros love, and eros love, it's time, boom, we'll shrink it down. It's kind of just a taking. It's about pleasing myself. It's about satisfying my own self. And then there's phileo love, and that's more not about take. That's like give and take. That's Justin, we're going to be friends. We'll give and take. Sometimes I give, sometimes I take. But we, put each other in that place. We get along, boom. What great friends we can be, give and take. But no, we know this one. This one is the word agape. This is the word that's always about giving. This is the one that when I make my decisions, when I think about my reactions, I always want the best for you. It's not me first, it's you first. I consider your welfare before my own. Justin, that's what we know, right? Which, by the way, I'm just going to say, if you're going to have that picture, if you're going to say consider the other before yourself, it has to start with humility. You see how important humility is? It starts there. So we all get that. And we could spend some time and we could roll on that. And we always need to do that. I've said many times, I think we should read 1 Corinthians chapter 13 every month of our life. I think if love is the fulfilling of the law, then we should read a picture. The only illustration really we have of it in words is in 1 Corinthians 13, and we should read it. And Brother Bill, we could spend some time there. But there's this word in between there that catches my attention. So I'm not going to make you listen to the same thing I said about love for 52 times. I'm going to say, Brother Bill, you generally have a good picture of this. But the word that catches my attention is forbearing. So I'm going to just kind of like take that prepositional phrase out, and we're going to make it forbearing love, okay? What we're talking about here is forbearing love, the action verb and the object of the preposition, forbearing love. You know, we got our little picture of love, but Brother Bill, I'm really struggling with what does it mean to be forbearing love? So I look up the word. I want you to do this. Keep in mind, the end goal of all of these things is unity. Okay. Forbearing love. Well, the literal definition means to suppress with silence. A kind of love that suppresses with silence. A kind of love that covers things up. Struggling a little bit. Turn to 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 8. And above all things, have fervent charity. I'm in the right place. Brother Moyer, I'm in the right place. We're talking about forbearing love. Above all things, 1 Peter 4, 8. And above all things, have fervent charity among yourselves. For charity, look at this picture it's about to give us. For charity shall cover the multitude of sins. Cover, like putting a sheet over. Proverbs chapter 10, verse 12 would say, hatred stirs up strife, but love's going to cover. When we get to this picture of forbearing love, Brother Bill, forbearing love is talking about us having love one for another that allows. Look, it's you loving me, allowing for me to make a mistake. Now, we're going to get to unity, and we're going to spend some time. I'm going to tell you, this idea of unity, this is one of those pictures that's a real struggle. When we say unity, we usually truly mean uniformity. And the world can have that. Right now, if you believe politically everything as this candidate does, you fit in the group. All you have to do is look, act, talk, and speak just like they do, and they'll be glad to have you. Or you can look, act, talk, and speak just like this group, and they'll be glad to have you. You can go to any team, you can go to any lodge, you can go anywhere, and as long as you are little mini-me's, you fit in the group. Justin, is it true? Okay, that is not Christian unity. And that's why we need forbearing love, because we won't all fit in the group. Brother Maddox, you realize that there are Christians in Ethiopia right now. You know they grew up with a total different lifestyle than you. They dress different, they talk different, they eat different, they walk different. They have different views, different challenges, different problems than you. But they're supposed to be united together. Okay, there are people in China. There are people in New York and people in Florida. They're different. This idea that everybody has to cookie cutter be exactly the same, it's a problem. But Doug, if we could just pull that off, we wouldn't need forbearing love. Do you realize inside this church we have Christians at 8 years old? We have Christians at 15 years old. We have Christians in their 20s. Do you realize that a 20-year-old grew up in a totally different time period than you and I? You know, their viewpoint on the world is totally different than yours and mine. That their struggles are different. The changes that have affected their eyes, the glasses they put on are different glasses than we struggled with. But we're supposed to be able to come together. Brother Bill, I'm going to tell you, you know what that's going to take? That's going to take some forbearing love. Justin, how long have you been saved? 2011. So, if I found someone that had been saved 2 years, do you think they're viewing things exactly the same as you? No, because you've got 11 years doing this. 11 years of study, 11 years of influence, 11 years of God bringing you along. They've got 2. But we're supposed to be able to come together in unity. And Brother Bill, that takes some forbearing love. Our love covers a multitude of sins. It doesn't make it okay. But what it's doing, Miss Maddox, is say, you don't have to look exactly like me to be in my group. There is something that unites us. But it's not the same thing that unites the world. So look at this. It starts out with humility, rolls to meekness, then it gets to long-suffering, which says, I can take it, I can endure it. But Justin, it doesn't stay with, I can take it, I can endure it. It goes to a forbearing love, which means it goes to a place where, no, I'm not taking it, I'm not enduring it. I consider you before me. I want your good before me. I don't even think of me. Gets to a place that is selfless. Now, just 2 things. One, we're going to go to Matthew chapter 5. We're just going to read some verses in Matthew 5. But I want to go back to that illustration. So remember, it's been 10 minutes now, because I've talked really fast, which means there's probably lots of gaps in here. But remember that illustration of the dad. The dad who's struggling with humility, therefore he's not under control. The one who ends up swinging, who ends up hurting, who then ends up saying, you know, take care of me. That picture is so far away from the selfless, meek, humble, long-suffering Christian leader we're supposed to be. I don't know why we slow down here. I mean, it's obvious. You guys know this is part of my childhood. This is such a huge part of who I am. Matt, here, I'll give you my motive, so you don't have to figure it out. I would say, I would do, and we've been talking about hope when I speak on Sunday nights. There should be hope for the family. There should be hope in the church. There should be hope for our government. But I'm going to tell you, I believe the hope for all of those things begins with humility and meekness and long-suffering and forbearing love, which it shows itself in forbearing love. All the law and the prophets can be seen wrapped up in this. Love God, love one another. We're going to read Matthew here. I got 4 minutes. But Hank, just think how many parents you think go home and say, I love you. I love you to the spouse, or I love you to the kid. Yell, scream, tear down, guilt, pout. I'm going to tell you, next week when we start to look at unity, you want to know why it's so important? Because it's out of this world. You want to know why Christian love matters so much? Because there's nothing else like it. It's attractive. Matthew chapter 5. We're just going to read a couple verses and we're going to be done. Matthew chapter 5, verse 43. Oh, you got them? Good. Ye have heard that it hath been said, thou shalt love thy neighbor and hate thine enemy. But I say unto you, love your enemies. Bless them that curse you. Do good to them that hate you. And pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. We always want to talk about the enemy, but he wants to make sure we get who this is, Brother Hank. Brother Hank, persecute you and use you. But I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you. Do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Let me tell you, that's not natural. That will stand out. That ye may be the children of your Father which is in heaven. For he maketh his sun to rise on the evil and on the good, and sendeth rain on the just and on the unjust. Just, you know what that's saying? That's saying when you do even a little bit of that, you know who you look like? Now remember who the church is supposed to be left down here on this earth. It's supposed to be body too. We're supposed to look like Christ. For if you love them which love you, what reward have you? Do not even the publicans the same? Doug, if we can be in unity with those who look just like us, big whoop. If we can love those who treat us well, big whoop. Anyone can do that. It's easy to go set with those who think and look at the world just like me. That's not what he's called us to do. That's not the attitude of the heart. And if you salute your brethren only, what do ye more than others? Do not even the publicans do so? Big whoop. Be ye therefore perfect, as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. And that's calling us to walk the worthy walk, which next week is going to look like unity amongst the brethren. Everybody close in a word of prayer.